Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to me doing a video in my truck. This is my first time I think I've filmed a Saturday Hodgepodge video in my truck. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a scarf, I'm headed out fishing. I've been doing a lot of fishing since the pandemic and the lockdown and everything, but I'm going a little stir crazy, needing some sun. Thought I'd combine two things. I'd go out and fish, maybe make a video for my fishing channel, which I haven't done for a long time, and then do this kind of Saturday Hodgepodge, which is really just me kind of rambling about books and YouTube related things in general. So the scarf is something I can wear up over my face, which can be like a mask, but also it helps me from getting my ears sunburned when I'm fishing, and it protects the back of my neck from sunburn during fishing also. So that's why the weird orange scarf. I have it turned inside out because there's I got this one for free in some fishing stuff I get. This feels more like a fishing video than a book video. Anyway, in some fishing stuff I get, and it's got this really weird like mouth with teeth on it, and it's too ugly. So I wear it inside out when I go fishing, so I don't have to, have this really weird black mouth on my face when I'm fishing. Anyway, to get to book stuff, I've had a really good reading month so far. What is today? Today is the 19th. By the way, celebration of Juneteenth in the United States. Juneteenth is the day in which the last one of the Confederate slave states had the Emancipation Proclamation, or the proclamation that slavery came to an end, was read in Texas on Galveston Island on June the 19th, 1865, and it really become a celebration of the end of slavery in the United States. So that's the day, and I will be doing some reading for Juneteenth when I get home today. So I've been having a really good reading month. And this week has been good. I finished James Baldwin's Giovanni's Room. I may have done that. I can't remember if I had finished that by last Saturday or not, but it's finished today, or it got finished this week, and I enjoyed it. James Baldwin is rapidly climbing the list of my favorite authors. I did a review of Giovanni's Room, and it's not necessarily the greatest James Baldwin book I read, but I thought it was really effective and a really good book. I also finished Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin this week, which I have to tell you is just an incredibly fun read in all kinds of ways. It gets a little dark near the end, but for the most part it's just really almost like a soap opera with all these different characters and their own kind of plot lines, which are interwoven and intertwined at some point. And it was really delightful, I thought, for the way in which it just, for a book that's been, I can't remember when it was published, but I would say in the 70s or in the early 80s, and really kind of, I think it was actually serialized in a San Francisco newspaper when it started off. For a book like that, it's just kind of straightforward depiction of LGBTQ plus relationships is really, I think, kind of groundbreaking. There's no equivocation. There's no, it treats those relationships as they should be treated. And for the time period, I think that must have been somewhat groundbreaking, even though the history of the book is obviously something I'm not, an expert on. But I really enjoyed that. It's just fun. And one of my favorite things about it was it just reminded me of all kinds of stuff from the 1970s. So if you're old like me and you're alive in the 70s, even though I was just a kid in the 1970s, so I didn't go to a lot of discos or anything like that, or any. Also East Texas, no discos. But anyway, so it's just really fun and kind of reminding you of things about fashion, about the way people looked, about how they decorated their homes, and so that was really fun. I enjoyed that. I also finished my first book for the BookTube Prize, which was Sea People. Obviously I can't react to that, but I will say that it made me, and this isn't a review of the book at all, because I haven't read, well, I've read one of the others, which I read for the first round, so I don't have to reread that one. But it was nice to have a nice, solid piece of mostly historical nonfiction to kind of read during this time period. So I had a really good reading week. Today, as I said, is Juneteenth, and you know, there's kind of a Juneteenth read-along. There are lots going on, but today I'm going to be reading, I won't finish it, but I'm going to be reading Beloved by Toni Morrison. This may seem like an obvious pick, and really there's just a little bit of serendipity, more than a little bit of serendipity in today's, or maybe it's synchronicity, I get confused, in today's video, because I'm already a part of the Toni Morrison 2020 read-along, in which we're trying to read all of Morrison's novels in the year 2020, all 11 in chronological order, and it just so happens that this month is Beloved. Last night I read about 30 pages before I went to bed, and again I'm just staggered by the sheer power of that novel. You know, we read her first 4 novels already this year, and those novels were great, and they're really amazing in their own way, but nothing really so far. This is like clearly like I'm going to say a huge leap in terms of the power of her writing and the just right out of the gate emotional power, rawness of the story. So I'm looking forward to getting more of that read today. As you know, I'm doing this year, I'm doing a short story project during which I read one kind of classic American short story, and then I do a little discussion video, and that video will be out on the 25th. And this month's story is A Good Man Is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. And again, another piece of that synchronicity, serendipity happened this week, which brings me to something that's come up in relationship to a much more popular author in the United States, in the world today, and how we think about these authors and their works when they say something controversial, when they say something, in the case of J.K. Rowling, transphobic, in the case of Flannery O'Connor, we find out that they made several racist statements. And the reason why this came up for me with Flannery O'Connor is I'm reading Good Man It's Hard to Find this month as my story for my short story project, but also in my Twitter feed there was just, you know, a link to a New Yorker article which was talking about and had some quotes from some of Flannery O'Connor's letters that she wrote to a good friend of hers, which express some outright racist statements. She makes some specific statements about James Baldwin, further fitting in with the kind of synchronicity, serendipity of this video, where she says she doesn't think James Baldwin's very intelligent, that he just likes to talk, and he seems like he has ideas that if he were a white writer, nobody would care what he thought. Anyway, just some really overtly racist ideas, which, you know, bring up the issue of how do we approach the work of an author. On Twitter, Mark from Words Everywhere had a discussion about this, and it came down to, and there was a lot of good back and forth on his Twitter thread, I thought, and it comes down to something I kind of agree with, or mostly agree with, that Mark said, and that is you can't completely divorce the writer from the work, because the work is the writer. You know, the word choice, the way the sentences are structured, the themes, the subtleties, even if they're unintended, in the words chosen and the arrangement of the words on the page, tell you things about the writer. And, you know, and so what Mark's kind of staking out there is this idea that the author matters, that authorial intent matters, and whether or not the author was clear in that intent still matters. Now, there's a whole school of thought in terms of reading in books that it doesn't matter what the authors were, what the author's intent was. The only thing that matters is your experience as a reader. And I can understand that point of view, but in the case of problematic writers like J.K. Rowling, or in this case, since I'm really talking about Flannery O'Connor, is that kind of lets us off the hook. We can say, oh, it doesn't matter if the author of this book was a racist, or the author of the story was a racist, because, you know, what matters is the story. But particularly with Flannery O'Connor, and with all Southern writers, and you may know that I kind of have this thing with Southern writers being kind of something I'm really interested in, and I've read, you know, somewhat widely in terms of American Southern writers, is that this issue of race, particularly for those writers who wrote in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, this issue of race is a subtext of who they are at the very least, and oftentimes, you know, the reflected in their work. And so what the New Yorker article, and I'll put a link to it down below and hopefully you'll be able to access it, what the New Yorker article suggests is that you really can't separate them out, that in knowing what we now know, and really these letters have only been out there since about 2014, that knowing what we now know about Flannery O'Connor, that we have to maybe re-examine her stories for evidence of her racial prejudice in these stories, and this then has to become a part of our evaluation. And so one of the things that I've had to come to accept, being, you know, a fan of the work of William Faulkner, I don't think there's anything wrong with reading what he wrote, but I think I have to read what he wrote with the understanding of his ideas about race. He did have racist ideas. I have a whole video about it. And so I think as long as we read, to me, and I'm asking for your input down in the comment section, I think as long as we read these works with an understanding of who the authors were and what their attitudes are, and that, you know, maybe we apply what we know to our evaluation of their work in that way, and what the work actually says, then I don't see any harm in reading the works. Now, that's separate from buying books and putting money in these authors' pockets. In the case of Flannery O'Connor and William Faulkner, they're dead, so you're putting money into their estates, I suppose. But in the case of J.K. Rowling, you know, she's alive, and you have to make those decisions for yourself. Anyway, that was my kind of thought. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about this and authors, and whether or not, you know, we should apply what we know about them to what we read, or should we just read the book? Can we separate? To me, I don't think you can completely separate them, but I don't think that with, you know, exceptions that are up to the individual, that what we know about them should necessarily prevent us from reading their works. Anyway, like I said, I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section below. So I think the rest of this month, I'm going to be reading Beloved today and hopefully through the weekend. I'm going to try to start my second BookTube Prize reading, which is the Yellow House, which is a memoir, I believe, about an African-American woman growing up in New Orleans. I want to start reading that this weekend. On the 22nd, I'm going to begin my buddy read with Lukash, and we're reading The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin for the end of this month. We've been planning that for, I think since February. So I'm going to be doing that. That will be some of my reading. And then I had planned on reading Maurice or Morris by E.M. Forster this month as a part of my Pride Month reading. I'm not sure I'm going to get to that. Okay, also I forgot. So I've already been fishing and got really bad hat head, worse than my normal hair looks, and I'm sweaty. But I forgot I was going to show you the retirement gifts I got from my district, and the first one is just like such a Texas thing. I think, or maybe it's a southern thing. I got a tactical kind of hunting knife with my initials on it, and I stopped so I could open it without being afraid of cutting myself. But there you go. That is one of my retirement gifts. Let me close it without cutting myself. So that's one of the more unusual retirement gifts I got, even though, you know, I do oftentimes when I'm fishing need a knife to cut line or stuff like that. So there was that. Also, I got a rocking chair, and I'll just insert some footage of my rocking chair, which I thought was cute, and then a plaque, which I won't bother to show you, with my years of service on it, and the nameplate from above my door, which is actually the thing that that I wanted the most when I retired. So there you go. There's my retirement swag. Is that the word for it that I got for retiring? I thought about that today because I got in the car and I saw the knife, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Anyway, there you go. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below about Flannery O'Connor and racism and this kind of you know, author related to the work discussion that I attempted to start here. As always, thank you for watching.